Hello, welcome to episode 2 of Let's Fix Movies.
Let's fix movies. All right.
I'm Jacob.
I'm Caleb.
And today we're going to be talking about Captain America.
Yes, the Star-Spangled guy. Does he have like a name? Is he the Star-Spangled something?
I don't know, because, that's weird. Almost all the superheroes have some sort of adjective, like the Invincible Iron Man, the Amazing Spider-Man.
The Nazi-punching Captain America?
We'll work on it.
Works for me. We'll come up with one by the end of the episode.
Also, just to clarify, Let's Fix Movies, we're not just going to be talking about bad movies, because all 3 of the Captain America movies, well, in my opinion anyway, are really good.
I think all the Captain America movies, especially the first 2, are really good movies. It's just an issue of focus and adaptation, in my opinion.
Especially with the second and the third ones.
Yeah, because it's really important that you've got to focus on both aspects, similar to with Iron Man 3, of you've got to take an adaptation, and you also have to go with, I want to tell a director and a team of writers who want to tell their own unique story, and adapting something word for word off the page might not be satisfying. And I completely understand that everyone has their artistic vision, and someone wants to do something different. But you've also got to keep in mind that you are making an adaptation of a film for an audience, and a lot of the people who are coming to your film are coming to your film for an adaptation of that comic.
But yeah, we'll get to that once we talk about Winter Soldier. But in the meantime, let's start off with Captain America, the First Avenger, which, honestly, in the grand scheme of the MCU, is a movie that I don't think gets nearly enough love.
I love Captain America, the First Avenger. Now, I admit that for me, the second half blurs into a paste of punching things, explosions, Red Skull being incinerated by space, and a plane. But the first half is, I think, probably one of the strongest first halves of any Marvel movie.
Yeah, like, pro tip for comic book characters, never be a guy named Steve being played by a guy named Chris in a period piece, or else you're going to be in a plane crash.
They're the same. It's the same movie. That was my only problem. That was my biggest problem with Wonder Woman. It's an amazing movie. It's one of the best movies I think superheroes have ever gotten. But oh my gosh, spoilers for Wonder Woman. Oh my gosh, does Steve Trevor die the same way Captain America gets frozen? It is weird. All right.
Okay, sorry. Great movie. If you haven't seen Wonder Woman, see it.
See it. Make your grandma see it. She will thank you later. No, she's probably already seen it.
But anyway, so Captain America, the First Avenger.
Yes.
Just like Iron Man 1, we have very little we would change, but there is more substantial things that we would change.
Yeah, and it's one of those changes that's less very specific information and more a much broader change. And there's a reason we keep bringing up Wonder Woman. It's because the team in Wonder Woman is really memorable, and it's really well developed, and even though I don't remember their names, I still remember them, whereas in Captain America, the First Avenger, the Howling Commandos are complete non-entities.
Which is ironic, because the team in Wonder Woman is mostly composed of original characters, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, like, other than Steve Trevor, I'm pretty sure most of them are, if they exist, are extremely minor characters. Whereas the Howling Commandos had an entire comic book series with Nick Fury. There was Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos. They're characters with decades of history, and bizarrely, they're less memorable than a group of original characters made this year. So our only real recommendation for the First Avenger is make it a little more like Wonder Woman, I guess, retroactively, backwards through time. Spend more time on the Commandos.
Well, though, in order to keep the movie from being too long, we would have to cut some things out, but luckily for us, we have figured out one thing that we could just get rid of, just cut it out and we would lose nothing. That really, really pointless falling out that Steve has with Peggy. It's after he was being hit on by the secretary. We could just get rid of that.
It's one of those end of the second act when the couple's doing fine. Something has to happen to damage their relationship so that they both go into the third act unhappy, and then they get back together, or at least not quite, but they fall back and, everything's okay again.
It's like top 10 cliches that I absolutely hate.
Honestly. But yeah, we need more time, because there's that 2 or 3 minute montage of Captain America leading the Howling Commandos, and that is what I wanted. I think that should have been the focus of the second half of the movie. And you could keep most of it the same, but the Howling Commandos should have been with Steve during the final battle, at least until the plane took off. We should have gotten more scenes with them, more scenes to make them more unique, because in Wonder Woman, every one of the members had kind of their own scene.
Well, we admit that the least, like, interesting, well, not really, I'm referring to Chief. I'm not really sure what he was the least of.
Chief was definitely, I think, the less developed. Like, he was fun, although ultimately his biggest scene is White Man Took My Land.
Which in all things considered, isn't really that unique, but at the same time, it still gives him more development than the Howling Commandos got.
Yeah, there's a Frenchman, I think. There's a Brit. There's Dum Dum Dugan, whose name I only remember because it is, well, Dum Dum. But there's no personality to these guys. Dum Dum has a mustache and wears a bowler hat, but I have no idea if that's in the movie or if I'm just remembering him from Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which is a game I played 10 years ago, and it left more of an impression.
Like, all I remember from Dum Dum in the movie, well, at least I think it was Dum Dum, was the line, "One of these days I'm going to have a stick of my own." That's the only thing I remember from any of the Howling Commandos, just that one line.
Yeah, I don't even remember that line.
Like, he's, like, insulting one of the Hydra prison guard guys.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that's probably Dum Dum. Yeah, it's just give more time. That's what we needed. We needed more time with the Howling Commandos to make them really feel like a unit. Even if it was just one of those character gets named and then does a cool thing and then we move on.
Yeah, it would have been more development than we got in the movie, but as we said before, that's really the only thing that we change in First Avenger. It's more substantial than the change we made to Iron Man. But First Avenger as a whole is a really good movie. Steve himself is a great character, and I really like Red Skull. Even though he's not the most interesting villain, it's still great just seeing Hugo Weaving be an over-the-top Nazi.
Yes. It's fun. It's also really funny how he doesn't really do a German accent for most of the movie.
It's like, yeah, like... Although, before we move on, I just have to say, like, when they're breaking everyone out of prison and everything's exploding and Red Skull comes in, I was honestly kind of expecting him to go, "Mr. Rogers."
An army of Red Skulls. Mr. Rogers, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Rogers. I guess Captain Rogers would be the proper. He gets, like, don't they just send, like, a letter from the military? Goes, "Congratulations, you're actually a captain now. We got this directly from FDR that you've just been promoted to being a captain." All right, so
yeah, First Avenger, great movie.
Yes.
We think it's kind of underrated. Like, it has like 70-something% on Rotten Tomatoes, even though we think it's one of the stronger movies in the MCU.
And I actually prefer it to both of the other Captain America movies.
Speaking of, Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier.
Let's start, like, again, we should probably say up front what we think of this movie. Like, I really, really like it. Like, although, here's the weird thing about it. Like, on the one hand, I think it's probably one of the best movies in the MCU, but it's also, weirdly enough, one of the least memorable. Like, really the most memorable things about it are the museum scene at the beginning and Zemo's 3 minutes of screen time, which, well, actually, no, Zola. They both start with Z. Like, Zola's 3 minutes of screen time, which we'll get to.
Yeah, now here's the thing. I'm not a big fan of Winter Soldier. I enjoyed it the first time I saw it, but I haven't really watched it since, and every time I think about it, I'm like, ugh, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? But I recognize that it's a good film at the same time, and I finally figured out what my problem is that most Marvel films are more than one genre.
Yeah,
most of them.
Like, for example, Ant-Man, like, I don't know why that's our go-to movie when talking about the MCU.
It's a good example.
Because Ant-Man, it's predominantly a heist movie, but it balances out really well with the fact that it's a superhero movie.
Captain America: The First Avenger is a war movie.
But it's still a superhero origin story.
Exactly. The problem, I think, with Winter Soldier that I have is that Winter Soldier isn't a superhero movie. It's a spy thriller that only has the barest trappings of a superhero movie.
And don't get me wrong, like, as far as spy political thrillers go, it's a very good one. But people went to see it because they wanted to see a superhero movie.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think I went into Winter Soldier wanting a Captain America superhero movie. I got a really good spy thriller, but I didn't get what I wanted. This is probably an off-topic example, but Rogue One. Rogue One, I think, is a pretty good movie, but fundamentally, I was expecting a Star Wars heist movie on the Death Star, and I didn't get that. So I wasn't satisfied.
I wasn't really sure what I was expecting, to be honest, when I saw it, and I'll admit, I honestly think it's my second favorite Star Wars movie.
Fair. All right, so back on Winter Soldier. So we gotta balance it out. We gotta balance out the superhero stuff, and I think one of the best ways to do that is to focus on Steve more.
Yeah, because, like, this is something that Caleb actually brought up in regards that's a complaint he hears about both Captain America and Superman.
But it's one that I think applies a lot more to Captain America, especially in the MCU, which is Captain America's kind of a boring character.
Well, in First Avenger, he was fine.
He was fine in First Avenger because he had a very defined character arc. We had things that he liked and cared about. Like Superman isn't just a really cool, nice dude, but he has personal interests. He loves journalism. That's why Clark Kent works at the Daily Planet. It's not, at least in the comics, it's not just a matter of, in Man of Steel, keeping his ear to the ground. It's because he sincerely has a passion for journalism.
Not to mention, we have things in the comics, like, for example, in the comic series All-Star Superman, which if you haven't read it, do it. It's one of my favorite comic books of all time. All-Star Superman. Read it, seriously. Anyway, sorry. Like, in that comic, we find out that in Superman's spare time, he's been restoring the Titanic.
Yeah, like, Captain America, and don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed a lot of what I've been reading of what I've read of Captain America in the comics, except the past year because he's a Nazi. I had to bring it up. I had to bring up that Captain America is a Nazi, and he's actually killed Avengers now, and he's also a really bad political commentary on Trump.
Yeah, suddenly One More Day doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah,
because at least One More Day was a matter of erasing something from canon as opposed to just completely slapping decades of comic history in the face.
Yeah. So, with Winter Soldier, with Captain America as a character, we don't know a lot of what he likes. We have that list. He's got the book. He's got the little notebook with the list. It's like Star Wars, Rocky. It's a great moment. But here's the thing. Can you tell me anything about Captain America's interests or the things that he has opinions on?
He likes 40s antiques.
Okay. Like, that's it. Like, Tony. Tony is a great character partly because we know what he likes. We know what his opinions of things are.
Like, we know that his favorite fast food restaurant is Burger King.
Which, I have no idea why it's Burger King.
I don't know. Everyone has their preferences.
Yeah. But that's the thing is, I can tell you a lot of information about Tony as a person. What he likes, his opinion on things. Even little things. Like, some people call you, like the next Leonardo da Vinci. I don't know about that. Some people call you the Merchant of Death. Oh yeah, that's about right. Is there something like a line like that from the first Iron Man?
Mm-hmm.
He's snarky. We understand him as a character. I can't think of anything about Steve other than he soldier, he from New York, he good guy. Like, that's all I can think of for him as a character.
He punches Nazis.
He punches Nazis, but then again, shouldn't we all?
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to get more on the Nazi thing a bit later, but let's keep talking about Steve.
Yeah, that Steve is a very underdeveloped character, and I understand that we don't want to do too much of a fish out of water story. I think that the first Thor, we'll get to it, is bogged down by being a little too much a funny fish out of water story for the first half.
Like another thing I'll say about Wonder Woman, it did the fish out of water story really well, but at the same time it didn't dwell on it.
No.
It got it out of the way in like 5 or 10 minutes and then moved on to the really cool stuff.
And here's the thing, you don't even have to have really fish out of water, but have Steve with preferences. Like, I, don't remember if we didn't really see a lot of Steve's house. We saw it like once or twice, his apartment. But, I would have liked a scene of him sitting down listening to a record player or the radio.
We did see that he has a record player.
He does, but I would have loved to see him listening to it. I would have loved to know, what does he listen to? Is it just 40s music? And that would be fine. Or does he listen to something else? Like, do we see him sitting there, like, listening to the Beatles and being like, I think I like these fellows. I hope they stay together. Like, I would have loved to see, I don't know why he's vaguely British.
He's actually Irish, isn't he?
He has Irish descent. Yeah, his parents are Irish immigrants. But yeah, like, I would have loved to see him listening to his record player or see him doing a crossword puzzle. Like, even if he's not a fish out of water, I think it would still make sense for him to have preferences from his era. Like Peter with the cassette player. It's very much an artifact for him of his past. And I think you could have had a record player with Steve, radio. Maybe he's got, like, baseball cards like Coulson, or something. Like, I feel like there would have been a good way to kind of show us, like, I would have loved to see, what is Steve's house like? What does Steve go home to? What does Steve do in his spare time? Like, I feel like we should have gotten more of him as a person because I think he's a really flat character in Winter Soldier. And then I think he becomes an actively annoying character in Civil War, but we'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
So yeah, more focus on Steve. The next we get to
Nick Fury.
the fake out death. Oh,
I freaking hate these.
I hate these. I think fake out deaths are a bad plot device in general. But not only did they decide to have a fake out death, but this came out, if I'm correct, the same year or
Thor: The Dark World,
within a year of Thor: The Dark World,
which also had a fake out death.
Which also had a fake out death. And if it was like, X-Men had a fake out death and then Spider-Man had a fake out death in the early 2000s, it might have been a little weird, but they were two separate franchises. But Marvel, like the Marvel heads, okayed 2 fake deaths in Phase 2 within a year of each other. And they want you to go to both of those movies.
And to make matters worse, both of those fake out deaths happen to fan favorite characters, so nobody is buying any of them.
No, with Samuel Jackson playing Nick Fury, Samuel Jackson won't even admit that Mace Windu is dead. You think he's gonna let them kill Nick Fury? No, he's not. He's going to beat the crap out of the Russo brothers. You don't say no to Samuel Jackson. You don't kill off Samuel Jackson's character.
The Russo brothers had better not screw up Infinity War.
Well, we'll see. But yeah, so I did not buy the Nick Fury death for a second. And so our way of handling this is, I think that the fake out death should be resolved almost within a scene of itself. Change it from being a fake out death to being one of those moments where you hold your breath wondering if the character's going to walk out of the flames or not,
Mm-hmm.
And, have it be made really apparent to Steve, and maybe only Steve, that no, Nick Fury's alive, Nick Fury's still kicking, and he is not done.
And then the way that we actually confirmed that Nick Fury is still alive ties into something else that really needs to be addressed about the movie.
Because part of the climb, Black Widow's she's the secondary character of this film.
Black Widow's great. We don't really need to change much about her.
I would have liked to give her more to do or to say, because she has a similar problem to Cap, is that I think they're both too flat characters.
I know, but I think, she's definitely has more personality than Steve does. And honestly, yeah, I've really liked Black Widow ever since Avengers, because like I said, I wasn't too excited about her in Iron Man 2.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe give them a little more snark or something, or even have her be a bit more, hard-edged or something. I don't know.
Okay, anyway, back to gaping plot hole.
Yeah, the climax of the film, does she kill Pierce?
And I'm pretty sure it's Fury who shoots him.
Okay, but, you have, for part of the climax, Black Widow infiltrates Hydra's S.H.I.E.L.D.'s council,
mm-hmm.
and gets this far by impersonating one of the other members with this random, super advanced, face tech that it's never even hinted at in the film. And we'll get to Civil War, because this same thing happens in Civil War, and it's bizarre.
The Captain America trilogy, a series full of random impersonation technology and car crashes.
All 3 of them have really weird, super accurate face disguises.
Although I do admit that I do like how in First Avenger, Red Skull's face mask actually looks weirdly unsettling.
A little bit. I think that's just Hugo Weaving's face.
I know, but there's clearly something that they do with it that makes it look slightly artificial.
Yeah, but the issue is that this is so central, because I was sitting there watching the film, and then the old lady just rips off her face, and it's Black Widow. I'm like, what? When could she do this? That would have been really useful earlier in the film when they were on the run, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So here's our idea. What we do is we have this dude, it's this old grizzled white dude. I don't know who you'd have to play him. You could do anyone. I was going to say Kurt Russell would have been cool, but now he's Ego, so no, we wouldn't do Kurt Russell. Because I was going to do a Snake Plissken thing,
mm-hmm.
from Escape from New York, or LA, I don't know which was first. I think it's New York. Not important. But get some old grizzled actor dude, to play, this old dude, maybe give him an eye patch, or glasses or shades or something. And then, he's following Captain America and Black Widow, and then finally Widow or Steve turns and, grabs him and throws him up against a wall, and the glasses fall off. And then, you see him reach, and you see, he reaches up, and he pulls off his face, and it's Nick Fury. Nick Fury disguises himself as comic book Nick Fury.
Yep, because Nick Fury in the comics wasn't actually Sammy J until the Ultimate Universe.
Yep, one of the best ideas the Ultimate Universe had, and one of, the 3 good ones.
Fun fact, apparently they really, in their Ultimate Universe, when they were doing Nick Fury for that comic series, they actually legitimately went out and got Samuel L. Jackson to lend his likeness to it. And Samuel L. Jackson agreed to it on the condition that he'd be allowed to play Nick Fury if he's ever adapted into a movie, which, of course, he did.
I'm so glad that happened.
I know. Also, the Ultimate Universe sucks.
What if we have, a nice little nod to the comics is Nick Fury disguises himself as the white dude comic book Nick Fury. It'd be a really cool little gag, and it would explain part of how he got away, and then he leaves, he's like, I don't need this anymore. I can't do a Samuel Jackson impression, but he gives Black Widow the face tech and sets it up. And then you're like, oh, she can disguise herself now. Then later in the film, when the random shield lady rips off her face, it's Black Widow, you're like, oh, that's what that's for. Because we also don't see her capture this woman or impersonate this woman at all.
Mm-hmm.
So just setting up the face tech is at least a good ways toward being like, oh yeah, that's fine. I totally get it.
All right, so yeah, one final note. Apparently, it was explained, in the movie, it was explained in a deleted scene, which filmmaking 101. Don't delete scenes that explain vital plot points. Why do people insist on doing this?
It's all good, Jacob. It's okay. I'm upset about Jimmy Olsen too. You are mad, my guy. Wow. All right. Yeah,
sorry.
That's the thing. It's in a deleted scene is not a valid excuse for a filmmaker, because every filmmaker has to make the decision to cut things, to put focus on certain things over other things. And a scene that literally furthers the plot has to stay. And this gets into a little thing to cut out. Bucky does not need to be mind wiped twice.
Yeah, because there's a bit where after his first... Okay, for those of you who haven't seen the movie or haven't seen it in a while and are a bit rusty on it, after Bucky and Steve first fight, and Steve recognizes him, Bucky is brought back to where the Hydra lair is. He's clearly distraught over this. So then the bad guys are like, okay, he's been out of cryo freeze for too long. Let's mind wipe him again.
Yeah, and then don't they mind wipe him one more time before the final fight? Or is that the only time?
Actually, I think that's the only time.
Oh.
Well, we don't need to put the mind wipe thing in. Make it more of a slower, gradual realization.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing is cut out the mind wipes. Don't mind wipe Bucky. Don't do it. Have it be a very slow, gradual realization. Have it be really emotional. And that gets into Bucky. Man.
For a movie called The Winter Soldier, there isn't a whole lot of the Winter Soldier in the movie.
Yeah. Also, I don't care about Bucky. That could be an addendum to the first Avenger. Is technically we could say Bucky is part of the Howling Commandos. Mm-hmm. We need more time with Bucky. He's like, oh, he's best friend. We like him, but he died, and it's sad. But in the Winter Soldier, the film itself doesn't give me any reason to care about Bucky right now. It doesn't give me any reason why I should care that Bucky's become the Winter Soldier. Because he's just, he's dead best friend, whatever. It's not important emotionally to us as an audience, unless you shift Steve and Bucky, which if you do, fair enough. However, your fanfic, it does not give the film better motivation for its characters. As well written as yours might be. The film needs to stand on its own two legs, and not the legs written by Bucky x Steve XX 1996. But yeah, Bucky, we need more time with him. Or what I would suggest as a scene to add into the film would be to have a moment where the Winter Soldier is in disguise walking down the street or something. And this can be anywhere in the film, really, before the final battle. Ideally, I'd say in the first half, in place of the mind wipe or something, where there's maybe a kid that's playing in the street or something, and in this really random moment of reflex, Bucky rescues the kid
from getting run over or something.
Yeah, the kid, a truck's coming by and the kid doesn't notice or something. And this would immediately give us some emotional connection to Bucky, and we could see Bucky get emotional because for the first time in who knows how long, he saved a life and not taken one. And then we get this. It would really help to give us the image of this man who has been changed and tortured and is essentially a good man trapped in this hollow, empty shell. Oh, one point that the movie has I absolutely give is the costume design on the Winter Soldier.
I know.
I
It's
love
great.
that lower half mask.
Mm-hmm.
It looks great. It makes him look super creepy. But yeah, we need more focus on Bucky as a person and not Bucky as a plot object for Steve to search for. You know. All right, so then this goes.
We're not done talking about Bucky though. We're gonna get more into him in Civil War.
Yeah, this is just Bucky in Winter Soldier. Okay, so now we get into
The villains.
The villains. Hoo boy. Not only does this film not have the luxury of going full superhero, so its villains aren't, if they're not deep, they're not even memorable. You know, Alexander Pierce is played by Robert Redford, who's a famous actor, a beloved actor. My grandmother loves Robert Redford.
I remember in U.S. history class in high school, we actually got to see the movie All the President's Men. We're talking about Watergate, and he was in it.
Yeah. Oh, he was one of the dudes.
Yeah, he was.
Yes, that's what I remember from. He's a good actor. He's a very famous actor.
But here's the big problem with Alexander Pierce. It's pretty much one of the same problems we had with Aldrich Killian from Iron Man 3. Literally the only connection he has with his comic book counterparts is the name.
And here's the thing.
He's an original character in all but name.
He's basically an original character, and the problem is he's not a more interesting character. That's the fundamental problem.
Which is especially bad because the movie basically hand delivers us a much better person who would have been a better main villain, Zola.
Arnim Zola. And here's the thing. He's in the first movie, and that's a great way to introduce him. He's set up, and when you see him, when they go into that bunker, and he reveals that he's alive, and it's that awesome, like, Matrix code.
That's the one scene. That's the one scene in the movie where it feels like a comic book movie.
He's like, yes, in 1972, I transferred my entire mind onto these magnetic tapes, and I now am immortal and have been guiding history for the past 40 years. And I'm like, yes, absolutely.
Like it's just the exact right degree of comic book silliness, but it treats it with a lot of dignity, and it's really well handled, and it's the best scene in the movie.
It is, because you're just like, holy crap, not only is that guy back, this is what he was always building towards, but he's a face on a screen who's living inside of towers of magnetic tapes and, like, computer blocks the size of your
I know,
bed.
it's a really awesome scene. He himself is really great. Like, the way they handle his face on the screen is really creepy and really awesome. Like, it gets a lot of the story out, and then they blow him up in, like, 3 minutes.
Yeah, and he also gives us a lot of information about Hydra. That Hydra, I believe the exact quote is, Hydra believes that mankind cannot be trusted with its own freedom.
And then he points out that humanity is now at a point where it is ready to willingly hand its freedom over.
And this gets into the political side of Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier wants to be a political thriller, and every political thriller needs something to be going on. And it's supposed to be a film about freedom versus security. And it's not.
Because Nazis are in it.
Nazis.
Once you throw Nazis into it, it ceases to be a morally gray issue of two equally valid sides that are constantly at odds with each other, because there's really no way to make Nazis sympathetic.
No, there really isn't. And even if you want it to be the antagonist actively holds one opinion while the hero holds another, we are supposed to root for the hero's opinion, sure, but we should at least be able to sympathize and understand the villain enough that we can go, I see your point, even if I disagree with your methods.
And the movie almost does that, but the villain's a Nazi, so it kind of falls flat.
Yeah, that's the problem, is that Pierce is just a Nazi. And it's also a little weird to me that Nick Fury went all this time knowing this dude, and never at one point did he say anything remotely Nazi-esque. Now, granted, it's established in Winter Soldier that they had basically Operation Paperclip, where the American government took in and hired Nazi and German scientists from World War II to make them evil machines. That is actual history, and it's kind of terrifying. S.H.I.E.L.D. did the same, which makes sense. But it's a thing of, Nick Fury didn't know anything about this? Maybe not. That's also an issue in the comics. But, I think that Pierce shouldn't be a Nazi. He should not be a member of Hydra. He should be someone who says security over freedom. It is better for us to have control so that people can be safe, and then later we'll give them their freedoms, or something like that. Give him a motivation and an ideology that is consistent but radical. And it's in the radical side of his opinion that he and Hydra find a common goal, and that's what makes him the antagonist. That's what makes him the villain, is that he's a man who's willing to do terrible things for his ideology.
And on that note, like, Zola needs to be the head of Hydra in this movie.
Yeah. Pierce should be at least, if not answering to Zola, he should at least be on equal terms with Zola.
Because in the movie, there's a throwaway line that establishes that Zola was working for Pierce, which is unbelievably weak.
It is. It's weird. But yeah, so have Pierce be this guy who's extreme, and you don't even need to change a lot of his character. If anything, all you need to really do is replace the scene finding out he's a Nazi with him just actually giving an impassioned speech on why he thinks that the world needs, specifically America, needs to surrender its freedoms to S.H.I.E.L.D. for the world to be safe and for the world to be happy. You know? It'll be a motivation that's inherently going towards good, but it's corrupted by his personal views and his lust for power, and he's willing to work with Nazis to accomplish it.
On that note, another reason we think that the main villain change from Pierce to Zola should happen is because it's kind of weak for the main villain to just be anticlimactically shot.
Yeah.
Because think about, like, what else do we have in the MCU? Like, Obadiah Stane, completely disintegrated when the arc reactor in Stark Industries HQ goes off. Like, Yellow Jacket from Ant-Man. Like, the Yellow Jacket suit shrinks without him and crushes him. Red Skull gets disintegrated and maybe bifrosted, I don't know. Pierce gets shot.
Yeah. Or you have, you have Loki in the first Thor movie, where it's like, is cast off into the void of space to go crazy.
He experiences what pretty much every Mario Kart player has ever experienced on their first run of Rainbow Road.
That would motivate me to just try and destroy mankind if I wasn't a member of them.
Yep.
You made this! You creatures! No redemption. But yeah, so Zola is the main villain. Let him ham it up. And this goes into how we think we should handle the final act. Now,
in the movie itself, we have Project Insight, which is basically like those helicarriers have these gun turrets that are coded to the DNA of pretty much everyone on the planet, and it has the ability to basically predict, it's like whether people are going to be a threat based on like personal histories, their backgrounds, etc., political views, what have you.
So fundamentally, it means that the third act is Hydra mans helicarriers in the sky, shooting everyone they don't like. Which, if your goal was to get mankind to surrender its freedoms, boy, have you just made the biggest resistance ever against you. Not only is it a case of maybe that's the end goal.
Also,
that's a bad end goal. But it's really weird that their final goal is to just take to the skies and shoot everyone they don't like.
Yes, after decades of slowly working our way into the government's reaping chaos and slowly altering the course of history, and now we're going to shoot everything.
Yeah, guys, what you do is you quietly take over the government and install a secret police like every other dictatorship in history. Did you guys learn nothing from being in World War II? You had the Gestapo and the KGB to base your plan off of. And your response was gunship. But it's such a bad motivation. And here's the thing, the opening scene of the film gives a much better idea, where you have a false flag operation. You have Hydra is having people doing bad things. Captain America comes in, saves the day. Everyone goes, yay, Captain America, yay, S.H.I.E.L.D., we trust you. We will do what you tell us.
Mm-hmm.
We will give you our freedom if you make us feel safe. So that's what you do. We can still have a pretty similar third act, but instead of having actual helicarriers, we should replace it with something a little different.
I don't remember what your other idea was. Like,
it was some kind of facility or some kind of weapon. You know what? If we're really gonna go with if we're gonna have evil robot Nazis, what about a Zeppelin? What about a Zeppelin with guns on it that shoots people?
Yeah,
giant Hydra Zeppelin.
Like we said, it's a comic book movie. Act like one.
Yeah, like imagine, like you see this Zeppelin taken to the skies. It's got the Hydra logo on it. It's got like all these guns that you can make evoke tentacles or something, you know. And just at the center of this thing, you see this huge computer tower with all of Zola's faces, and he's just like, yes, Hydra rises again or something. And then Captain America has to go and take it down, and now it's a double-edged sword. Now, or not double-edged sword. It's a catch-22 because here's the thing. If Captain America, their goal is for Captain America to win. Because if he takes down the Zeppelin with Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. behind his back, if S.H.I.E.L.D.'s got his back when he does this, then Captain America has doomed the freedom of the American people. But instead, if he makes sure that he is separate from S.H.I.E.L.D. when this happens, as a fugitive, or I don't know if he's exactly he is a fugitive. He's a fugitive. If he's a fugitive and he saves the day and proves S.H.I.E.L.D. wrong, but also defeats Hydra, then boom, he successfully saved the day from both of the threats. And Black Widow can do her thing, Fury can do his thing.
Falcon can do his thing, but let's not drag on the fight with Crossbones for so unbelievably long.
Oh, also, let's have Crossbones maybe get like 1 or 2 lines, like give him something to do where you're not just like, who's that? Who's he? He's got 2 belts on his chest that makes an X. Let me check the IMDb. Oh, he's Crossbow. Oh, that's why he's got the little X. That's cute.
Yeah, Crossbones was done a lot better in Civil War, even if he was only there for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I actually recognized him.
40 minutes. Wow. How long was the last one?
40 minutes.
Well, we're already breaking our record. We're tangenting a lot more, in case you haven't noticed.
Yeah, let's just make that our thing.
Yeah. They will get progressively longer. The final episode will be as long as the entirety of the MCU 3 phases.
Nah.
We jest. But yeah, so just organize things to be better. So instead of having the helicarrier, having S.H.I.E.L.D. openly shooting everyone, instead what you do is have it where the goal of the Hydra Zeppelin is to terrify the world into letting S.H.I.E.L.D. bring out these huge helicarriers and having this super powerful weapon constantly hang over your head and monitoring you, controlling things, terrifying you. That basically the final fight isn't just Hydra's shooting everybody from their airships, but is instead a race against time to prevent the world from giving Hydra the keys to everything.
Yeah, like Fury and Black Widow are there with Pierce doing their thing. Like Cap is over there dealing with Bucky and Zola, and Falcon is busy with the helicarriers.
Boom, or preventing them from going off. Like he sabotages them or something, give them something to do. And that's about Civil War. That's
Winter Soldier. There's one more thing about Winter Soldier. That's just a minor detail, but it's something that bugs me to no end.
Oh, yeah. You hate this.
The vending machine.
I think it's hilarious.
I think it's stupid.
It's objectively not good, however.
Yeah, it's like, admittedly, he didn't have a whole lot of time to think of something, but surely they could have done something better than the vending machine. Like, why would you do something where if more than 3 people wanted to get a stick of gum, his entire plan implodes on itself?
Yeah.
Like, even then when he comes back to see the vending machine empty before Black Widow comes in with the flash drive, he looks at it like, what? No, my plan was foolproof. How could a bunch of people have wanted gum?
Crossbones just walks up, goes, time for my daily 3 pieces of gum.
Oh my gosh.
Or no, he buys 2 pieces of gum, stuffs in his mouth, and goes, 1 for the rope. What? A flash drive? Government secrets? Well, it seems that we've just won. Yeah, it's a bad plan.
Okay, I don't know what we would replace it with, but something not this.
I just cut that out entirely. Just have him hold on to it or something. There's ways. All right, so Civil War. Hoo boy.
Okay, here's the thing about Civil War. I will admit that I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was a huge step up from the comic. Regardless of how you feel about Civil War, it's significantly better than the comic on which it is loosely based. But here's the big issue that we both have about Civil War. It's not even about the Registration Act or the Sokovia Accords, but you know what? Screw it. Muscle memory. I'm calling it the Registration Act.
Yeah. The
film
is about Bucky.
It's not about the Registration Act. Like in the comics, It's like, even though I hated the original comic, I still love the idea of Cap and Iron Man still like fighting each other and the Avengers being split down the middle on the like because of two completely different approaches to superheroics. But no, instead the movie's all about personal vendettas.
Yeah, the film is about, oh, well, I think Bucky should go to jail for terrorism. What? You can't do that. I love Bucky. He's mine. And then it just escalates and gets worse and worse until finally, the final battle, which is a beautiful microcosm of the entire film, consists of Captain America and Iron Man beating the ever-loving crap out of each other in a fight that has nothing to do with ideology, but is entirely Bucky. So, first, biggest thing, make the film about registration. Make the film about ideologies. These guys made a political thriller. Why didn't they make this one like a war disagreement thing? This one fails because it's almost... It's not a superhero movie, but it's not anything else.
Yeah, but here's the thing that, like, you said that you went into Rogue One expecting it to be a heist movie, but you got something completely different. Like, that's how... It took me a while, but that's what I realized I felt about Civil War. That I was expecting it to be that the two sides butting heads over the Accords, but it ended up just being about Bucky.
I think most of us got
and then
that
later
impression.
Rhodey.
I think most of us got that impression from the film, is that it's not about the Accords.
And
the
granted,
Accords are window dressing.
And granted, the Accords actually were handled really well compared to the comics.
Partly because we actually got information that was consistent on what the Accords were actually for.
Yeah, like, the second biggest problem with Civil War in the comics is that we never actually got a concrete answer as to what the Registration Act actually was.
The Marvel higher-ups had the brilliant idea of make the Registration Act vague so that individual comics could tell their own stories, when the entire point of the comic is people having opinions on a thing. That's like going, we want you to write 2 news articles on the most recent baseball game, but we're not going to tell you who won, so just write your articles based on who you think would have won and what you thought of the game. What you're going to get is complete inconsistency.
For the record, I think the biggest problem with the original Civil War is that everyone in the entire comic is completely unsympathetic, especially Maria Hill.
Oh, yeah. And that's also partly an issue in this movie, is that Captain America is a jerk.
Yeah, like, I'm gonna be completely honest here. Just watching the movie, even though the movie was, like, mostly focused on Cap, I honestly sympathize with Tony more.
Because Tony wants to make things right.
Like, there's a scene where he wants to make amends with Cap, and sort of as a peace offering, he brings in, like, the pen that FDR used.
Yeah, to sign them into World War II. And it's like, this is the pen that they used to give aid to the Allies or something. And Captain America, a World War veteran, who literally went through an experimental procedure so that he could fight for his country, looks Tony in the face and goes, some say it brought us closer to war. And it's like, what the heck? You literally got injected with science juice so you could fight in this war. Are you completely disillusioned with with who you are and what you did? It doesn't feel like he is. I don't think that Captain America looks back on what he did in World War II and thinks he made the wrong choice.
Yeah, it's like, bottom line, if you want to present two people having a disagreement and you have one of them willing to compromise and the other one isn't, most people are going to sympathize with the person who's willing to compromise.
Especially when it's over an issue that doesn't quite exist in the real world. Superhero registration is not an issue we have to worry about. Well, not yet.
Well, the Accords are basic. Well, I don't know. The Accords are a bit different, whereas the Accords in the movies are more along the lines of the Avengers need clearance from the government in order
from the panel of the UN as well. The entire world has to give them permission, basically.
Which basically takes a lot of the pressure off of their shoulders in case things go wrong.
Yeah. Which is okay. It gives them a kind of a safety net. It allows things to be more planned and more organized.
And admittedly, both sides have their own pros and cons, and those are discussed in the movie, but the problem is that Cap and Tony are representing their individual sides for the most part, and yeah, Cap is a bit self-righteous, I think.
Because the thing is, Captain America's position in Civil War really boils down to, I think that Bucky should never have anything bad happen to him ever because he's mine. And also, I don't trust the government because last time the government was all Nazis. That's it. Tony, meanwhile, is like, hey, so
Look, last time we operated in a foreign country, I kind of a third world country got incinerated by a robot that I built because of a hallucination that Wanda gave me. Yeah, thanks for that, by the way.
Yeah. Meanwhile, she is just a victim to the entire story, of course. Which I'm not saying that she's not it shouldn't be addressed that she's having her freedoms taken away, but it's also like it's kind of your fault that Sokovia happened. So.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's something that Avengers 2 got wrong that I'm glad was kind of addressed in Civil War. That Avengers 2 was pretty much like 75% her fault.
Yeah, and the other 25% was really Tony's fault.
Yep.
And here's the thing: Tony wants to make amends. Tony wants to change things, and it's really telling. And especially here's also the thing is, we have more emotional history with Tony. We care more about Tony than Cap fundamentally because we spent more time with him. He's a more distinct character, and we've seen him grow and change. So when we see Tony Stark, the dude who in the first movie, is like, oh yeah, I'm the Merchant of Death, babe. Like, when we see 3 movies later, he's sitting here and saying, we need to answer to somebody. We are drawn to that because we see him change and grow so much that we want to support, and we're like, wow, this is important to you. This has changed you as a person. And meanwhile, Captain America just glares at him the whole movie and refuses to take things. He says, we should handle our own things. But he doesn't give any explanation as to how. He says that, the Avengers have to take responsibility for their own actions, but doesn't offer a solution. Tony says, we can amend the Accords. We can, amend them. We can make progress. We can talk about this. This isn't set in stone. But Captain America never gives an alternative.
Which I think is that is probably the biggest problem. Like, the way the Accords are handled, like, they're handled really well, but their presence in the story, they're like, role in the story or lack thereof is the biggest issue with the movie.
Yeah, is that the film is way too much about the falling out of Captain America and Iron Man over Bucky and the Accords. It's not about the Avengers being torn apart. And I understand this is Captain America Civil War. I understand that it's a Captain America-focused film, but it's already Avengers 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you can do to change that with the way the film is currently presented.
Still, as far as hero versus hero movies go, still miles better than Dawn of Justice.
Well, I think that they're basically the same movie.
Yeah, but Civil War has more better stuff in it.
Although I enjoyed the fight between the heroes as much, I didn't enjoy the final fight between Cap and Iron Man because it just felt unhappy. It was tragic, and it should have been tragic. That's good that it was tragic. But I just sat there going, I don't want this.
Well, in Civil War, it was tragic because as you see 2 heroes like coming to blows over something very, very personal. But Batman vs Superman was depressing because you're seeing these 2 beloved childhood icons trying to kill each other for a very, very weak reason.
Yeah. So, have the Accords be really the focus. And we have a couple ways to do this. We decided that, one, the opening scene in... where is it? Where is the first scene?
The first scene, was it Nigeria?
No, it was
somewhere.
It was a country. It was a country. It's Milan?
I don't remember where it is, but that country from the beginning with Crossbones,
the Crossbones thing.
Yeah, the Crossbones thing, which admittedly Crossbones was done miles better than he was in Winter Soldier.
Buy Crossbones now with punchy action gloves. Or punchy action spring arms.
Which I only noticed on my second viewing that those are the same punchy gloves that the Shocker had in Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah, although his got an electric blue charge to them.
I'm the Shocker. I shock people.
What is this, pro wrestling? Alright, so what we're going to do is take the Crossbones scene, just, copy, cut, pull it out of the, highlight it, cut it, just take it out. We'll get to it later. Have the first scene be a hearing. Have all the Avengers standing in front of this panel of judges. We can have Ross there. We have T'Chaka. And then we have Zemo. Now, here's the thing. In Civil War, Zemo is actually a decent example of changing a character and making them a little more...
Because here's the thing, though. Like, even though, some people might disagree with us on it, because even though he does barely resemble his comic counterpart, there's just something really fascinating about the fact that in Civil War, some random average Joe was able to do what no other Marvel villain has ever been able to do and completely break the Avengers in half.
He was a Black Ops assassin.
I know, but
fairly average.
like he was working pretty much on his own.
He was.
Like, and there's something I love about that, but he could still be better. Like, at least pay lip service to his comic counterpart.
Yeah.
Like I said, like this should still be an adaptation at least to some degree.
Yeah. So our solution is to have Zemo be a Sokovian noble, because other than Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and we don't see Quicksilver obviously at all in Civil War, we don't hear anything from the Sokovian government or the people of Sokovia for what happened. So what we have Zemo is an actual Baron. He is, now obviously I know Baron is not a super high-ranking term in most, countries' nobility chain.
This is a fictional country in a fictional universe.
Yeah, so who cares? Zemo is Baron Helmut Zemo. He is a very important noble in Sokovia, and he has been selected to represent the Sokovian people's interests in dealing with the Avengers. And here's the thing. You add a little bit of, I want my country. It's my country that I'm set the Avengers about. But you can also have his family. The voicemail was a really cool thing. I really liked the voicemail. Mm-hmm. Where he hears it hears the first time, and then later you realize, oh, his family's dead. Like it works. It works really well. So it works really strongly to make him more sympathetic and more emotionally tied. It's a little cliche, I guess, but have that be a more personal vendetta, but then have the more overall vendetta of the Avengers destroyed my country with a really charismatic evil robot man. Mm-hmm. I'm not happy about this. And so what we do is we have him accomplishing a lot of what he does in the movie, but different. Like, Zemo's opening scene in the film is bizarre. Because you have this random dude in his house, checking his blinds, checking through his window, and he's like, someone's at my door, and he's like, and you see this weird dude in a turtleneck is like, hey, I accidentally hit your car. Give me the information on the Winter Soldier, or I'm going to drown you in a basin of water that shouldn't be able to go up that high if you actually pay attention to the film.
I thought it was kind of clear that the Hydra guy, purposely let himself drown.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, of course. But what if instead of that, you have this dude, after the initial hearing scene, you have this dude in this long, cool, fur coat, long black Marvel MCU aesthetic to it, and he's got this purple mask on. It's like a purple ski mask, basically, but it looks a little cooler. Making these illicit deals, and he's like, the world can never know my face. The world can never know who I am because I'm important.
So comic fans will know.
Exactly. That's how you use Zemo and have his costume, is that you make him a Sokovian nobleman, so he's got the Baron title, he's got the significance. He doesn't have the history with Hydra, but we see him using a couple assets of Hydra to further his own agenda, but he's not working with them the same way that Pierce is in Winter Soldier, but you still at least get a little bit of Hydra having a presence in the third Captain America movie. So essentially they become less and less important as the films go on, but they become more and more being used simply by the main villains. Mm-hmm. Have Zemo with his mask, the purple mask, the cool coat, have it be a disguise, because no one can see this Sokovian noble who is helping to write the Superhero Registration Act, or the Sokovian Accords, whatever, secretly dealing with Hydra. So that's how you fake it, That's how you give him his not fake it, but that's how you give him his comic book appearance, is just have it as an actual disguise.
So then, so moving on with the plot, so the Accords we move the hearing with the Accords to the beginning, when T'Chaka is there, Ross is there, Zemo is there, and then at this point, even though they have conflicting opinions on the Accords, they agree that this is probably for the best, and then the thing with Crossbones happens.
Yeah, so we'll move that a little ways into the film.
And the government gives the Avengers clearance to operate there, and do you think we should also address why the heck Vision wasn't there?
Maybe they couldn't clear him.
Since, technically speaking, he's not even a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, he also has only...
Neither is Wanda, come to think of it.
He's also not someone that the government has any history with yet. He was only in the final Avengers fighting Avengers 2. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's a thing of, well, we're not really going to let the cyborg Superman go out there and fight criminals yet. We need to get a better handle on him. That way you can also make more of a parallel with Wanda. Mm-hmm. That both of them are being kind of held prisoners within their own facility. Vision by choice because he logically understands the danger he poses, but Wanda is a person. She's not an alien robot man. She's like, I don't like being cooped up because it makes me feel like I'm not a person. I'm a missile.
It might as well like play up the similarities between the two of them because they're setting up a romance between the two of them. Because at the very least, there's a romance between them in the comics.
Yeah, it's slow burning. They're clearly close in Civil War already, but give them a little more in common. Give them a little more to focus on that. Focus on, So I was gonna say, move the Crossbones fight later. Probably you could keep it in the same place, really. But have it that the government has cleared the Avengers to go in there and topple Crossbones, who's working with this warlord or this dictator or something. And
maybe give them a name that's from the comics so that comic fans will recognize it and be like, oh, hey, something. That's a cute little reference.
Yeah. So the Avengers defeat Crossbones with minimal damage, Maybe it's a little different. But, have them fight. They topple this dictator. And, you see, the government starts coming in, and they start, clearly you can tell that the UN's going to start carving this area up for resources and land and power. And there's a moment where some of the Avengers kind of turn to each other and go,
were we just used to further a political agenda?
Yeah. Characters are like, I don't want this. This isn't what I want,
But meanwhile, Tony's side would basically be, very much maintain that this is a necessary evil because it's either further someone's political agenda or incinerate a third world country again.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You have veterans on both sides of the team. Rhodey is pro-reg, while Falcon and Steve are anti-reg.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have, what you can do is you can have them arguing. You can have two veterans. So that way you don't just accidentally end up with an anti-military, anti-government spin by having two different veterans on both sides saying, no, this is what we need to be. No, I don't want to be a soldier again. Didn't being a soldier matter to you? Well, yes, but this is something different. Does it have to be different? We're still trying to protect the world. Isn't that what we were always doing? I don't want to follow someone's political agenda. Sometimes you have to. Make it a lot more of a conversation.
And from that point on, once the characters are kind of already starting to choose sides, from that point on, the film will play out pretty similar. Although, like we said, in order to keep the focus on the Accords, Steve isn't overtly helping Bucky for the most part. Instead, he's mostly just jumping the gun and going after him himself because he feels it's his responsibility. But this is kind of dangerous because of the Accords.
Maybe it's a situation where, he wants to take in Bucky and not just let Bucky wander around free. Mm-hmm. He wants Bucky to get help. He wants Bucky to see, to get psychiatric help. He wants him to, get a new arm, or at least not have a robot arm anymore. To look after him, to try to make him who he used to be. I don't know how you would tweak the scene where Zemo impersonates the psychiatrist.
Well, oh yeah, another face impression, another face mimicking thingy in the Captain America movie.
Oh no, he just fakes being that guy.
Okay.
His face doesn't change. However, we do have the UN bombing, which you can keep. I have one particular kind of opinion on it, though. Mm-hmm. Have it actually be Bucky? Maybe? What do you think? Or maybe not have it be Bucky, but have it be, have it be Mooks instead of the, here's what we do. Instead of the weird, him in the hotel room impersonating the psychiatrist with the weird bomb, and then it's given to the Russians in the tracksuits to blow up and turn off the power grid and all that nonsense. Cut all that out. Instead, Zemo goes. Instead, the power goes out or something. I guess you can keep some of it. What you do is Zemo gets some Hydra Mooks to blow up the UN building right after Zemo lets Winter Soldier escape. Maybe he uses some Hydra code word. You don't need to have the bizarre pain, loss, rusted, tractor, red, star, sadness, insects, whatever that weird.
The only two words I remember from the code word were train car and homecoming.
And I think rusted was there too.
I don't know,
but it's weird. But maybe he gives a couple code words or something, and then he just sends.
Would you kindly?
Yeah, sends the Winter Soldier off to do a thing. He just sends him to run. He just lets him run away. And then you have the bombing at the UN, and it's connected. It's not... Zemo managed to find a way to perfectly replicate the face and hair of the Winter Soldier without anybody knowing how or explaining it.
Well, actually, I think you're getting the events mixed up. Like, I think he cut the power thing after the UN had already apprehended Bucky for supposedly doing the bombing.
Okay, I think we should swap those events, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Have Bucky get captured by Steve, then they take him to the facility, then Zemo gets him out, then the bombing, so that way it logically follows that Bucky was behind it. Because Bucky was just escaped, then the bombing goes off, or here's what you could do.
Yeah, in the movie, like, Bucky was in, like, a completely different country at the time.
Yeah. Like, you know, if Bucky is around, if he's running around, clearly a threat, then you have this bombing, it becomes a much stronger situation of, was Bucky behind it? Maybe, we don't know. And it makes more sense for the characters to have different opinions on it, you know? Airport fight, keep pretty much the same.
Keep pretty much the same. Keep Spider-Man, keep Giant Man. But that scene was amazing, and I love it.
Oh, one thing we need to talk about, and that is something that I have a strong opinion on, but I know you really love.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
the
that's
eulogy.
Peggy's funeral and the eulogy given by Sharon Carter, her granddaughter.
No, like her grandniece, I think.
I don't know if she's still the grandniece in the comics. Is she?
No, in the movie, she was definitely a niece.
Did she said Great Aunt Peggy?
Well, yeah, she said Aunt Peggy at some point. I'm not sure if it was
okay,
Great Aunt.
that's fine then.
Yeah.
That's fine. I just couldn't remember how they moved the age gap there. But here's the thing. It's a really good speech, but the way it's placed in the film and the way it works with Captain America's overall character is that Peggy basically dies and gets a funeral just so someone at the pulpit can go, Steve, you're right. You've never been wrong, ever. When people say you're wrong, that means you're right. Like, it's this crazy victim complex kind of speech where it's like, if people ever tell you you're wrong, you must be right. You must buckle down. Never compromise. Never, ever, ever consider for the briefest second that someone else's opinion could be true.
Which, the speech itself, is quoted almost verbatim from the original comic, and admittedly, I really like the speech.
It's a great speech. However, I think that the way it's used to further the film's story is bad. Now, I
personally don't mind, because I feel like Iron Man gets a pretty equivalent moment when he's confronted by the mother of a graduate who was doing goodwill service in Sokovia when it exploded.
Actually, I think if you make Steve overall a more even-handed and less standoffish character, that would probably fix it in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
However, the alternative I would offer for that speech would be for at the very end of the film, that's the speech Steve gives at the very end.
In lieu of the letter that he writes to Tony, which we'll get to.
Yeah. So basically, the speech goes from, you're right. You've always been right, Steve. Man, you're so never wrong, ever. Man, if that's not commentary on the way people view America, I don't know what is. America, you're never wrong. You've never been wrong. You're perfect.
Yeah, as much as I love America, even I will admit that's not the case.
It's not healthy to pretend it is. So if you change that, if you were to move it to the end, it would instead be a speech given by Steve of him basically acknowledging that everyone fought for what they believed in, everyone tried to make the right choice with what they had, and that he respects and understands everyone who was part of this.
Because I will give Civil War this, that even a lot of the characters on opposing sides were still really respectful towards one another.
Yeah, there were some great scenes between them. One of my favorite moments is, Hawkeye and Black Widow. It's like, are we still friends? Depends how hard you hit me.
Mm-hmm.
I love Ant-Man when he's in Tony. It's like, who is that? It's me, your conscience. We haven't spoken in a while.
Yeah, it's like Hank Pym was right. You can't trust a Stark. Who are you again?
Yeah, basically.
I love that scene.
It's great.
Well, most of that scene anyway. We'll get to Hawkeye's thing in a bit.
Yeah. So then the characters are captured and they're taken to the raft.
Which, I like the way the raft was depicted in the movie.
Yeah, it's cool. But here's where it gets real darn weird.
Okay, most of the scene is, well, like I said before, the raft itself is good, and I loved Ant-Man's bit of that scene, but then there was that weird speech Hawkeye gave.
Where Hawkeye's just like, man, all hail the futurist. Big Brother's sure looking out for us. You did such a great job, Mr. Tech Future Man. And it's like, what are you talking about? did you just read Extremis and notice that Tony calls himself a futurist at one point, and you're just using that as your go-to name for him? Like, Hawkeye, you're not Green Arrow. You're not, like, in the comics, Green Arrow is a very liberal, very, like, anti-authoritarian character. But that's not Hawkeye. He also wouldn't be like, the futurist will save us all. Like, this isn't what Hawkeye is. The straight man of the Avengers. He wouldn't be making this kind of speech.
Yeah, like in Avengers 2, there's even a really great scene where they're staying at Hawkeye's family farm where he's basically discussing with his wife about how he's basically the emotional glue holding the Avengers together.
Because he's the regular dude who just shoots arrows. You know? But part of what makes it really weird is just, it doesn't feel like Hawkeye, and it also doesn't feel really consistent with why he's complaining to Tony. Tony didn't write the Accords. Tony's not behind this. He's just one of the people who thinks that this is the right decision. If Ross was walking in and he was like, ha, 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 big brother, whatever, like, that would make more sense. Although...
it's like the Accords weren't Tony's idea, but Tony was completely 100% for it.
Yeah, but that's...
And he has very valid reasons, too.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is Tony's reasoning is totally fair. I don't know what Captain America's reasoning is beyond last time the government was Nazis and also Bucky. That's it.
Well, to be fair, that is also a pretty valid reason.
It's a valid reason.
That the point is that agendas change, so you never really know what you're going to be fighting for at any given moment.
However, Steve will always be fighting for Bucky.
That's true.
All right, so keep Peggy's eulogy or move it later. I think the most important thing is for the film to feel more even-handed. It can still focus on Steve, just have it be fair. Even if we're clearly following one side of the story more. And
another way that we could make it a more even-handed is to sort of make a parallel between Rhodey and Bucky. Like Rhodey is to Tony what Bucky is to Steve.
That's a comparison you can already kind of see. Now with Rhodey, one thing about Civil War is nobody dies, which I guess that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Both have because even though he doesn't die. War Machine still does kind of play the same role in the movie that Black Goliath played in Civil War.
Yeah.
Which is a discussion that I really feel uncomfortable having given what happened in the comic, but should we address that?
We're talking about the film. You do have Rhodey's kind of a case of black guy dies first. He doesn't die, but the only real casualty of Civil War is the black dude, who really doesn't have any character or independence beyond being Tony's black friend.
Yeah, that's kind of a good point, but it could have been worse.
It could have been worse.
And it's not and he isn't the first casualty in the MCU as a whole.
No. But I think we should have focused more on Rhodey. I would have loved to see an argument between, if you really want to make a parallel between Tony and Steve, they both have black best friends who wear gray and black armor and fly. I
don't know. The Falcon suit got a lot more red as the movies went on, which I like.
It did. I wish it was mainly white and red. Anthony Mackie was really disappointed that his costume was so gray. He was expecting to wear the white and red comic costume. But that's a discussion for that. I think that's his name, Anthony Mackie. I think that's right.
I don't know. I'm too lazy to look it up.
Pretty sure. Right. So we should probably wrap this up.
Yeah, we're almost done. We're almost done.
The only thing really left is the fight at the very end. Now, I personally find that there are other Winter Soldiers is a weird red herring, and it doesn't really end up mattering other than an excuse for the characters to go somewhere.
I admit that's actually liking that as a red herring.
I think it would have been perfectly fine for Zemo to be caught somehow, for him to be caught red-handed and he escapes. Mm-hmm. Or maybe have it where they're actively pursuing Zemo so that he can't, they're more aware of him, I guess. I don't know, maybe frame it just a little bit differently so that it also feels like Zemo is behind things more clearly to the Avengers, and it's like, so for the final scene, have him with the mask and the coat, and under it he could be wearing a nobleman's outfit with the sash and all the little cool medals and stuff, and he'd have the coolest costume ever in the MCU, and he'd be behind that bulletproof glass and is like, welcome, Captain Iron Man, or something, very over-the-top villain. It could be great. And but here's the thing, and the final fight is over Bucky completely.
Yeah, it's I think you pointed out, I'm not sure if it was while we were recording this because I have a very selective short-term memory, but you pointed out that it's a microcosm of the movie as a whole.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I said this on record, on the video that the fight has nothing to do with the Accords. After seeing the raft and finding out that Zemo was behind everything, Tony completely turns on Ross, ignores him, and flies out to go help Tony.
Mm-hmm.
He and Steve, or flies out to help Steve. Him and Steve are on the same page at the beginning of the final fight of Avengers 3. Or Avengers 3, Captain America 3, Civil War. Edit that in post. And then it's just like, Zemo's like, oh, hey, by the way, Tony, Bucky killed your mom and dad, bye. Oh, take out the weird CGI Tony at the beginning. Maybe.
I don't actually mind the thing because setting up the whole MIT scholarship thing. That's a pretty. I like that scene, and I think it's a pretty effective way to sort of justify Tony's interactions with Peter Parker.
I would also keep Pepper because Gwyneth Paltrow was available for the film. She went on record saying she could have been in it, and she wanted to be.
And I feel like since that everything got so nicely resolved in Spider-Man: Homecoming that I personally don't mind.
Okay, I guess that's one of those things you go either way. I have a phone call or something so Tony isn't just sad and alone.
I know, because the thing the impression that we got in the movie was that they had a bit of a falling out over the fact that Tony can't stop being Iron Man.
Even though it's obvious that he's never going to stop being Iron Man. Yeah, and that would have been maybe a good scene to have, or at least mention a little more than just, I guess they're not together anymore. And no one thought to change the teleprompter? How long were they on break? How long was it that Pepper decided not to come? Because Tony knew she wouldn't be there. So why did the teleprompter mention her? Did they not have time to fix it in post? You built a butler robot man for you! And now he fights crime! You couldn't fix your frickin' teleprompter 20 minutes before you went up and gave your speech? Just so we can get Tony choked up because I guess Pepper's gone now? Yeah, so the final fight, I think, should be ideological. I think it should be about, Bucky and Zemo are part of it. Maybe it's a thing of, Cap is I'm right. I proved right. This was Zemo's behind this. Bucky wasn't at fault. None of this. And Tony's like, I get that, Steve, but you still broke the law. You still turned on us. Zemo is one man who is part of the problem, but everyone else isn't. Maybe Tony could even say something along the lines of, do you just see Hydra everywhere you look when you look at authority? He could kind of say that Steve's paranoid. He doesn't trust any authority anymore. And sure, this proves that there's at least one bad group and one bad guy among the whole group, but that's not the reason to throw everything out. It's not fair. And it's completely dodging the issue of registration in the first place. And maybe that's what they come to blows over. Black Panther, he's perfect. Don't change a thing about him.
Yeah, we all love Black Panther.
Generally,
really looking forward to seeing his movie.
Yes. I love it. I love how everything looks. I love how everything sounds.
I'm looking forward to seeing Claw again because his 5 minutes of screen time in Avengers 2 were some of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yes. Okay, so the final fight should be about the Avengers. It should be about the Accords, registration, whatever. Steve is basically like, I was right. I've been right this whole time. And Tony's like, I get that, dude, but you still turned your back on the Accords. You've turned your back on the UN. I have to take you in. He's like, we can work this out. If you come with me, we can make a deal. And Steve's like, I'm not turning myself in. I'm not going anywhere. And they fight over it. And they're sad and angry. And it's the tragic fight that it should be. And maybe we shouldn't get the speech at the very end. Maybe it should really feel like a moment of tragedy and a moment of loss that...
Especially since the whole purpose of Civil War in the MCU is to put the Avengers in a position where they're completely divided down the middle and vulnerable right as Thanos is about to show up.
Yeah, exactly. You can... we shouldn't get the image at the very end of Tony Stank gets the phone.
Yes, this is Tony Stank.
Where we get the phone and we get Steve's little note of, call us if you need us. It's like, oh, is everything just fine now? They're still on the run?
The Avengers are split completely down the middle. One half of them are fugitives from the law and will probably never see their families for a while. The other half is crippled physically and emotionally. Like,
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, we shouldn't feel like everything's fine at the end.
like point out that there are consequences to, like, there are real consequences to
Because
this.
here's the thing, there are, but the film almost wants to make us forget about them in the last scene.
Like, yeah, the only positive thing to come out of Civil War in the grand scheme of the MCU, like, in universe, because I'm not talking about positive, like, it's a bad movie, because it's a good movie, but there are problems, but in universe, the only real good thing in that came out of the Civil War was that Peter Parker has a higher budget now.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, so it should end. Like, I get it. It's a superhero movie. You don't want it to end on a sour note, but that's the point. It's like Empire Strikes Back.
Complete with someone being frozen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I want to make a note of that, actually, real quick. I think that freezing Bucky is kind of a bad move. Now, granted, we don't know exactly where Bucky will be in Infinity War. However, I struggle to see a situation where it's not just they are desperate, they unfreeze him and give him a cool new vibranium robot arm. I can't see any other way you could bring him back without just unfreezing him. Things are bad. Boom.
I know. I like that whole thing, although mainly that's just because my inner Mega Man fan recognizes that Captain America Civil War is basically the Mega Man X series. I mean, you have a very heroic character from the past who wears blue, who has a friend who's also from the past who is programmed to kill the hero, but they end up being friends instead. But there enough of the programming has remained in him that it still splits the heroes in half where they come to blows and results in the friend realizing that he's still threatened freezing himself. That's totally Mega Man X.
My biggest problem, though, is because the film is so much about Bucky, at the end of the film, Bucky is not in a better place than he was at the beginning of the film. This whole struggle was about protecting Bucky and making sure Bucky was free, and at the very end, Bucky just chooses to be frozen. Tony offers to make sure that Bucky will, yes, have to go to prison for what he's done, even if it was under brainwashing, but he will be given the best help in the world. Now, Zemo messed with that, sure, but the offer still would be on the table. Mm-hmm. It's Bucky's not in a better place, and if the whole film's about that, he should be. I would have really liked to see, what if you see this dude walking down the street at the very end, he's just like minding his own business. You can't really tell who he is, but then you realize it's the Winter Soldier, and it's framed. So then we turn and we see he's got his sleeve rolled up because he doesn't have an arm anymore. Like he willingly took the arm all the way off, and he's trying to live his own life. Maybe we see him like withstanding the other Avengers or something. At least have Bucky be free.
Although the mere fact that they're in Wakanda should probably still be kept because as of this recording, Black Panther isn't out yet. So we have no idea where the MCU is going to go in that regard.
True, although we do know for a fact that Bucky is not going to be in Black Panther.
Okay, fair enough.
So if you just have him around without his robot arm, he's basically in the same position he is.
Well, then again, no one knew that Gwyneth Paltrow. Well, no, like not Gwyneth Paltrow. I'm like who?
Well, no, they've got a record saying that Bucky's not going to be in it.
Okay, because who was it that played Pepper again?
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Okay, I got her mixed up with the girl who played Mary Jane in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies.
It's all good. That was Kirsten Dunst.
Okay.
Kirsten Dunst. My bad, Kirsten Dunst. If you listen to this, you're a great actress, pejoratively.
By the way, next episode we're going to be talking about various Spider-Man movies.
Yep. All right. So that is. Let's make sure we didn't miss anything.
Okay, we.
Nope, we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good. Okay. All right. That's episode 2 of Let's Fix Movies. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob. And just to clarify, this is our personal opinions and what our idealized versions of these movies would have been. And we're aware that, objectively speaking, all of these movies are above average and really good, and they have a lot of fans. So if you disagree with us, good on you. But remember, one thing we will admit about Civil War, both sides of the issue were pretty respectful towards the other side, exceptions notwithstanding. But yeah, take a page out of that, and if you have dissenting opinions from what we think, we can be civil about this.
Yeah. But let's not go to war.
Indeed we shouldn't.
And peace out.